All right, welcome back. I hope you're having an awesome time so far. Next up, we have a panel titled The State of AI in the Gaming Industry. Please join me in welcoming our panelists to the virtual stage. All right, welcome. So excited to have you both here today. This is an interesting topic, and I think we're going to have a lot of fun with this one. So first off, let's kick it off with some introductions. Assaf, would you like to start us off?
Thank you very much, Patricia. I'm Assaf Asbag, head of AI at Playtika. Playtika is an entertainment company. We want to provide infinity ways to play to our users. Myself, I'm in the algorithm AI research domain for years, taking few managerial roles, and today I'm here leading AI at Playtika.
Awesome. Looking forward to getting your insights today, Assaf. And Curtis.
So my name is Curtis Cherrington. I'm part of the external development team at Electronic Arts. I am a senior manager. I've been in the gaming industry for, oh boy, something like 20 plus years across multiple projects, across multiple titles. Part of my role is looking at external companies that can support us mostly around technology. So looking at tools and AI integration, as well as machine learning across all of the development and within game as well.
Awesome. Yes, this is going to be great. We've got some great expertise here. So let's go ahead and jump right in. Our first question is, we've come a long way since Pong. Video and mobile games are seeing rapid evolution since their first creation decades ago. What are the key variables driving this evolution? Curtis, why don't you kick us off?
So for this is actually a really interesting question. And I think it really revolves around, I'm going to say two things. And I'm going to say the second one I think is more important than the first. So the first one I'll say is obviously the natural evolution of people look at is the technology. The first thing they look at is, hey, how does the technology back in the old days of when I started, we used to refer to it as bits. Like the consoles revolved around, like it was the 8-bit, it was the 16-bit, it was the 32-bit. That's where we focus. What is the processor speed? And to a lesser degree, we still do that today. But what I think actually drives it's sort of the gaming industry more is actually the tools. It's really around what are the tools that we're putting in the hands of the creators? How well can they actually make games? The restriction is less around the technology and more around like how good are our tools. And some of that is gaming engine. Some of that will be sort of like whether it's art programs, whether it's a various assortment of various like how are we sort of enabling with the tools. And what you see a lot of times in the sort of the background about when new platforms come out, a lot of the success around a new platform is how easy is it to develop games on. So in my mind, where I see is like, hey, it's really cool that we're doing all this new technology stuff. And I think even Assaf, he's going to be able to talk a little bit more to how like the mobile side, because, whereas we're moving we're moving quickly on the mobile side, but we actually sort of said, well, technology wise, it was a little bit of a more simplified thing, which I think arguably now it's less of a sort of a leveling type of thing, whereas we're talking a lot of our games are getting more and more elaborate. So I think in a lot of ways, if you said what was the biggest player, I would say tools technology.
Wow, that's a great perspective. Assaf, what's your idea here?
First, I want to say that I'm excited to be part of this evolution. Personally, I really love games. I'm even a bit jealous of my kids who have the opportunity to really enjoy this diverse and advanced world. At the professional level, I think that with the help of this amazing field called data in general and AI, data science in particular, I think it gives us the opportunity to really influence in an enormous way on the games. If it's the content itself, and if it's with the game operations. So I think in both areas we can do amazing things. And I think these are the main variables as I see it.
Awesome. These are both really great insights. Just a follow-up question. How does kind of consumer demand play into some of these variables? I know we're talking about, what technology is out there and how it adapts over time. What are you both seeing kind of as you're developing? Are consumers pushing you in a certain way, or what do you think there?
I would say so. And I actually think, to Assaf's point, he mentioned sort of the idea of sort of, analytics and data. And I think that was actually one of the most interesting transitions for the gaming industry. I almost want to say ever. And I will say that partly because what used to happen, and back in the old days, is that when you made a game, you could do focus groups, you could do, various things that would say, like, how are your people playing, how are the consumers playing the games, how are they sort of participating in those, do they like the games, and then how does the game sell? And when we used to do that with a box product, you send it out the door, and you the only real response you had was whether it sold well, right? That was really what the basis of it was. But in this day and age, the thing that we kind of get, which is really sort of an amazing thing, is the idea of someone, I don't want to say an executive in a boardroom, who is going to tell you that this is why that game sold so well. That I almost want to say that kind of goes away. And data science and sort of analytics become the truth, because that it actually tells you, like, legitimately, how many people are doing it, where are they getting to in the game, what are they buying in the game, how are they playing your game. And it's this wealth of information that really, I don't want to say it, the benefit is, if you've ever been in those kind of situations, you have that one opinionated person in the corner who's going to tell you exactly how the game is and why it's fun, and they're the genius behind it. And you're like, and the beauty of that is this data shuts them up, and you get to say, this is how a game really plays, and this is what they want, and this is what they're looking for. And we made this change and we lost people, or we made this change and we gained people, or they're playing through faster and more. So I kind of think that, to his point, it really is that sort of a powerful, real change in how we make games and who we make them for.
I have to say that I'm happy you took it first, Curtis, because from my perspective, from data and really as head of AI at Playtika, I don't know, I'm not familiar with another way. For me, because we are a mobile game and everything is live, so we always have the data, and for me, everything must go through A/B testing and must go through validation with analytics and the other tools that we're using. So I think this is what actually drives our growth and our plans ahead.
That makes sense. It's very interesting to see the kind of comparison between games that we've had, plugging into a TV set back in the day, and now games that were mobile first. So I think that's an interesting segue into our next question, which is, how is AI impacting the gaming industry? And we'd love to get examples here, so as specific as you can be. Assaf, would you like to start us off?
Sure, thanks. In my opinion, as I said earlier, the impact of AI in the gaming industry is enormous. I think it would be correct to look at it from two perspectives. One is the game content and the personal experience of the users. I think that with AI, we can enable today a customized experience for our users, and to create like a real feeling level of experience, whether it's the animation, the integration with the sound, the reaction, the neglected response time, latency to what's going on in the game, the environment. If it's multiple players, then the reaction with the environment. I think AI leverage this area significantly. And in terms of the personalized experience, we can really see what players love more and what they love less, and provide them with what they really like. At another level, which I think is important, is the operation level, the managerial level of a game. And again, here, I think we can do amazing things to automate the tedious and repetitive tasks that today take a large portion from the different functions within the game studios. So we can automate them. We can optimize all sort of configurations or rule of thumbs that are being used today to optimize experiences. And one of my favorites is to give actionable insights, real-time actionable insights, again, to the different functions within the game studios, like marketing, customer support, you name it. So we can actually provide real-time information. Listen, something is wrong here. You really need to notice that. If you will do something similar to this idea, you might see interesting results. So again, as I said, I think it's exciting times, and I think we can, with AI, impact a lot.
That's excellent. Thank you. And Curtis, what's your insight here?
Whoa, there's actually, you know, kind of even based on what Assaf said, like there's so many opportunities, and there's so many actually integrations, and they're actually in a lot of ways that I see, especially working with the teams, you find working with the teams in a multitude of different ways and different levels. And I'll give you a couple of examples for that. One would be something historically, the QA process of making sure that a game is running correctly. And we used to, in the old days, just have a ton of individuals, you know, testing and playing through levels, and we had matrix, and you'd go through, and now we sort of say we still have some of those, just because there's always those areas that we just want to get real eyes on. But we have, you know, kind of the QE portion that just is tasked with playing through the game or playing through sections of the game, kind of automagically, if you will, to find those areas that are not working correctly, that there's a crash area here, there's something over there. And so it's changed even the way we QA our games, you know, and provide that quality assurance at a sort of a massive level. It's sort of that, because it, you know, to the other point, it takes out the monotony of something that was sort of a very repetitive task. And we can actually sort of say, all right, let's turn, you know, 1,000 or 10,000, you know, sort of AI players in a direction to just go play this, go, you know, see how it gets through. And that's just sort of one of the things. And then we do, that's sort of the overall quality assurance, but we actually used to do, and we have done things where we'll send AI players on something like a racetrack in a game to sort of have them sort of, you know, try to practice going through and sort of seeing where it's coming in. And the other ones we used to do is, even when we get sort of to the point of having players who actually sort of are playing through, and then having AI look at adjusting something like a racetrack to where it says, okay, you know, like there's an area where, you know, people are actually getting stuck through an area, and it can adjust the track to say, well, okay, the way we deal with this, or where they keep sort of crashing here or adjusting here, it'll sort of automatically sort of adjust it and then let them race it again. So we can see it in a multitude of ways on the quality assurance, but, you know, it also dives really deeply. And I think some of the things that people don't see from the outside is how it's really going to drive our content and how we're producing content. Because as time has evolved, and what we're looking at with our you know, our various teams, but with our consumers, the consumer demand is content, more and more content. They don't want, you know, kind of that limited perspective. They want storylines that are, I don't want to say somewhat specific to them, but somewhat specific to their experience. How do we provide this massive amount of stuff for them? Because when you think about, like, even the aspect of, say, there's AI and, or let's see, animations, right? Like we have these animations, and we have a number of games that are that have tremendous amount of animation, and some of them are very specific about the style of the animation. So when we want to say, come in and go, okay, we either have to put an army of animators to take every single one of these individual characters and put them through a multitude of animation, and whether that's an emotional structure, as we have to really look at that. What we can do now with AI is that we found that we sort of give the AI the spec about what we're doing, and what we want, and whether that's sort of a transitional animation, is that we can now provide AI with a multitude of examples and say, this is what good looks like, learn what good looks like, and then let's apply that to the content of these characters. So the potential for us is that we can go from what was a small, a labor-intensive amount of content to provide a incredibly large amount of content without the same sort of pain points of having to just sort of deliver this. This makes for an interesting question, because I think one of the things that sort of, maybe I'm jumping ahead,
No,
but
go for it.
when we talk about, one of the things that sort of comes up, and much like technology, and I think one of the, I want to say, fears of AI is that we'll actually be sort of, say, taking jobs from traditional animators because we have an AI system in place. And this is a question that I deal with when I'm working with various game teams on a regular basis, is to sort of say, well, they would be like, well, I don't know if AI, first we'll do I don't know if AI can do as well as we can. And, fair, though, I think that that's not, not really the case anymore. But what I try to do is really convey to them that, like, look, let's take the busy work out of your job and let you focus on being what you do best and what you enjoy, because it is sort of the automating tends to, especially when you're dealing with highly creative individuals, it's really about conveying to them that the idea of like taking and automating things that they don't necessarily want to do, make life easier for them. But we haven't figured out yet how to sort of utilize AI to truly be the uniquely creative spark yet, even though we're trying. But not that hard, but I think it's the case.
I have to say that the question of replacing people or jobs with AI always come up, and my opinion is that once you take the tedious and repetitive work, you start to explore and you start to find new ideas and new direction that eventually provide more jobs than what you had at the beginning. And I have to say, when you talked about the content, I couldn't agree more. Content is everything. And then when you have a lot of content, you said, what is good? Good looks like that. But I said that there is no one good, because one user will prefer right now this experience, and another user will prefer this experience. And I think with AI, you can provide the content and you can customize it to the user. Now, how to utilize it, how really to do it at scale, this is another question. I agree about this point.
No, I think
that's
that's a
very
good point.
interesting. Yeah, that's a really interesting concept to talk about, how content is adapting to the users. I know it's one thing for mobile games, but how is that working for you, Curtis, with adapting this content using AI?
Yeah, well, we have a couple of, can't do too specific, but I mean, obviously, I think we're looking at, I think the first part was that, like, okay, we just need to, build out tremendous amounts of content, like overwhelm them with content in some sense. But I think to the point being made is that now we're looking at, like, how do we tailor and allow sort of the AI and all the content to really be for the individual who's actually experiencing it, and like what are they kind of coming into, and whether that's what they want to experience or what they are coming into it. And there's historically, I think older games tended to look at it like and we still do this a lot, especially with open world games, depending on the sort of the nature of your decisions, we try to tailor the game to sort of reflect sort of those things. And normally that will throw in a little bit of morality, right? Like if you go around and just, if you're sort of, murdering villagers for no good reason, that sort of the game goes, all right, you're a bit of a villain. Let's let's tailor this. Maybe you're not going to be welcomed into these various locations. And the other way is that sort of the good person who's coming in and doing nice things, and the AI sort of recognizes this. I think that was I don't want to say tip of the iceberg, but like that's really sort of that was sort of stop one. And now what we're looking at is sort of how do we take it so we can really personalize that experience and sort of really go with a much more, almost conversational. A lot of our titles have a story or a narrative in it, and it's about not just sort of having the branches that are like we have sort of currently in the world, about we say, okay, you say this person then goes to there, and this person goes to, and it's sort of this very structured thing. It really is about how do we form it so that the AI, you kind of end up with build a relationship with a character that was not necessarily predetermined in the structure. It's allowing you, depending on where you're going, but it's sort of thinking about how it's going to form. So at the end of the day, I think a lot of the goal is that you'll be able to play through a game, through a narrative, but that narrative will ultimately almost be yours, in the sense of that no one else will have actually played it through like you did. And the storyline and the structure will quite not necessarily be like that for anybody else. The benefit with that is that once we get into that world of like your experience is sort of unique, the replayability really opens up, because you may want to go in and be like, you know what, I'm just going to kind of play this a little differently. I'm kind of going in with a different mindset. I want to try it this way. I want to be, a different gender. I want to be an alien, like whatever it is that we can sort of say, like that game will provide you with an experience that will be, again, a unique. So you could I don't want to say live in that world a bit more, but you can sort of exist in that space and be like, I'm going to visit it differently. I'm going to do it a little differently. I want to see what happens if I go this way. Whereas we're not constantly adding a new narrative or a new storyline. I mean, we probably will, but like that sort of opens up that door a little bit more. So I think that there's a really big avenue in that for sort of bringing players in to really experience those worlds that we're creating.
That's incredible. And Assaf, are you seeing the same kind of trend with mobile games?
I have to say that I think we talked a lot about the content and the user experience. I'm not sure we gave enough room to the game operations and to eventually with AI, we can really provide efficiencies and effectiveness that I think we didn't talk about it enough. I think this is an important trend we should discuss. This is the era of digital transformation. And with AI, I think AI is one of the main enablers for this transformation. And from my point of view, one of the main development and research areas in AI to really impact the business is how to automate marketing, media buying, how to automate the customer support, how to automate, and not from the point of view of replacing people. From the idea of really the repetitive tasks and the tedious work. I repeat it because I think it's crucial, and I think it's less attractive to discuss if you compare it to the experience of users and to animations. But I think With AI, current AI capabilities, which are still not perfect, as you say, Curtis, we still have a question how really to utilize the AI in production and to do the impact. But I think that in the game management domain, we can really contribute a lot.
And that's an excellent point. Yes, the mechanics behind everything are really what's, pushing all of this to happen.
Exactly.
Curtis, anything to add there?
Well, I think he makes a huge point. And I think when it comes to the, how we're utilizing AI on sort of the, I don't want to say the back end, but the marketing side. One of the things I think that we always sort of look at is to say, like, where's our spend, right? Like, what's our ad spend? And if you dive, and this may be a little more, we have a lot of terminology for, especially on the mobile side, about sort of where you're spending your money. Are you making money? How does that sort of factor in? Which is actually kind of a beautiful thing in the sense of like, what is my cost to acquire a new person? What are they worth to me on that side? And AI is a great tool to sort of say, okay, let's find people who are what we're looking for, like who are actually going to go into this game and play the game and potentially spend money on the game. And, historically, I think that there was sort of that, like when this first came about, everybody's like, oh, cool. Like it's really sort of, I don't know, it's useful, but it was a little bit of people sitting behind a screen and being like, okay, let's try this, let's try that. And the beauty about AI is that AI can kind of get to that point where like, okay, look, we're trying these things kind of very quickly. And we can sort of automate that idea of the marketing, and we go back to the idea of sort of, I think as Assaf mentioned, the A/B testing, that we used to run, back a little bit ago is, we'd sort of say, well, what colors are we going to make the background on the ad? And you'd be like, and that would be a thing, right? But like with AI, where I can go, okay, no, we're going to share these characters and we're going to tell you which one they click on more. And then if they click on that one more, that one kind of goes into the system of being like, no, that's the one we're using. And where it takes away a lot of that sort of where the sort of, I don't want to say people were looking at numbers, and now we can sort of say, let AI handle that. Like it will optimize that without us having to necessarily be sort of hands-on. And I'm sure that there's some people in the world, probably sort of old school data scientists, who are like, oh, I really want to keep doing that. And be like, no, like, let's just, utilize the tools that are there. And I think in a lot of ways, that's what's really driving a lot of things, but it's also improving sort of how we're marketing our games. And in a weird way, I'll throw this out there in case anybody wants to disagree. I feel like a lot of times it's a little more like, if we know what you're looking for and what attracts you and what we're trying to put out there as our game, and sometimes it feels a little more honest to me that we're sort of looking at it and going, okay, we know what you like, and we're going to put this in front of you to share because we think this will bring you in. And if this brings you in, obviously for us, it's a matter of like keeping you in to make sure that you're interested. So in some ways, I feel like that type of marketing is almost a little more honest about what you're coming into, that you're going to have a better idea of what you're coming into because we're sharing with you what we think you understand and know.
I completely agree. This is what I said with the personalized experience. So you say, I know how to generate content, but you know what you prefer. So you just give all kind of options, and then you let the AI with the supervision of human to decide for you.
Mm-hmm.
Very interesting. And I think, we can actually shift gears a little bit and talk about some of the challenges. Which challenges do companies face as they leverage AI within video and mobile games? I think this is a very interesting topic considering what we've been discussing. Assaf, do you want to kick us off on this one?
Sure. I think we have a lot of challenges, and I think luckily all of them are fun to handle on the daily basis. If I need to choose few to note here, which I think are really important to discuss, I would start with privacy. I think privacy is a very important topic, and for us at Playtika, we see it as very important, even as we would say I would say a value. We really need to make sure that our players always feel confident that we keep their privacy. So we are doing a lot of activities in this area. We have an open line of communication with our chief privacy officer, with all my managers and my employees, to make sure that we are aligned with all the regulations, rules, requirements. It's crucial. So for me, this is a big challenge and a very important one to note. I think one of the hottest topics today in the AI community, and I think Otis said is something about it, utilization of AI. You want to utilize AI. So I think that the domain of ML ops and how do you do AI at scale, this is a big question today, because business today understand that they want to utilize AI. Now the question is, okay, we have a model, we have something working, you showed me some kind of an experiment or a POC. Now let me see it in the real life. Then some issues are starting to appear. Something that we are talking about a lot. How do you maintain those models? How do you improve them? You want to have it in all your games. Another big challenge. I have few more in my head. If you want to stop me, you are welcome. I want to say that also adoption from the business side is something Andrew Neck talked about it a lot in his playbook for AI transformation. Eventually, as a researcher, it's really fun to do the analysis and to research and to experiment and to see amazing conclusions and ideas from the data. But then to take it to a real use case and to make sure that it's being utilized and providing impact to the business, it's something else. So to really fine tune what are we solving here, and what are the questions that we need to answer, and during the development and the research, to make sure that we are always aligned with the business about our findings and the next steps and ideas, and eventually to make sure that these solutions are utilized. It's another big challenge. We basically change sometimes the point of view or the perspective of the people in the business, because we provide tools that they were not familiar with and they didn't think we will be able to provide. So you need to change people's routine perspectives, so it's complex.
Yeah, I can add on to that because I think every point, I agree with every point. The interesting challenge I see at the sort of the business level is, how do you teach people, especially at the upper levels? Well, actually there's two. So there's the upper levels and the lower, pardon, the lower levels phrasing. Obviously we kind of talked about what we do about the people who are doing the work, because we have to sort of tell them or explain to them how this isn't necessarily taking away their jobs, but it's actually improving their jobs. And sometimes it's a little bit of an education on how to utilize an AI tool to sort of improve their work. And sometimes there's a little bit of a hiccup to that. That's not nearly as much as I think to Assaf's point, is that educating the upper levels, the executive level about, in the manager level, higher manager level, about what exactly AI is, where it works, kind of where it doesn't. I think that even though you get into the term, they use, you know, AI a little too generally, when you're like, well, that's you know, you don't want to necessarily correct them. That's like that's machine learning, or this, you know, these are the different aspects of it, and where it actually makes sense to implement. And I think a lot of times when you talk about it, you know, we're talking about like where does it make sense to implement intelligence? That's a pretty, you know, you want to say that's a pretty broad stroke, but it's also how is it implemented? it's not just about sort of changing and saying, hey, we want to do more AI, you know, because that's the equivalent of saying we want to make more money, you know, and you're like, okay, that's not quite a thing. Like, you need to sort of say, what are you going to do to get there, or where can you implement AI that makes sense, or where will it improve things, or are you improving or are you utilizing AI to just utilize AI? I have a funny story that was kind of this was quite a number of years ago, and I was working at a different company, and I was actually on a specific game team, and it was partly with the gaming engine. And what we were doing was they were looking at sort of setting up AI, player AI. Like, so this was pretty basic stuff, like where we would actually say, all right, you know, your character comes into this vicinity, we set up a easy sort of, if they come into the radius, they get attacked, right? Like, this person comes in and goes, oh, they've been alerted, go fight them. And we had sort of the engine team, we had a lot more of the high level AI researchers and things like that. And we ended up initially with this enemy AI that was very, very complex and very, very heavy in terms of the code. And like, when you came into the vicinity, the whole game would slow down. And we're like, what in the heck's going on? Like, why is this such a thing? And so we took a dive into what the person's code was, and we're like, and we realized that he wanted to actually do a little bit of he was going to use it for a paper he was going to write. And the thing was, we were like, no, like, we just want you to, we don't need this, like, you know, it shouldn't be self-evolving alive. It just needs to say, there's an enemy over there, go get him. You know, is it this far out? Is it that far out? Alert, go. And so we're like, okay, like, and that to me was a huge example of where, are you doing AI for the sake of AI, or are you doing it for the sake of what you're trying to achieve? And I think it's one of those questions where we have to sort of say, okay, what do you want to do? And what AI or what system, or is it just an algorithm that makes sense to put it in there? And the problem that's a little tricky with that is that we need to convey that to executives. And so if you're dealing with the AI world, you actually have to get a little bit of where you have to be able to communicate what it is, like what it is they're trying to do. And sometimes it's when the executive comes in and says, I want you to do this, that you have to be like, okay, I need to translate that to something that works.
Wow, that's an excellent example.
I
Assaf, anything to add? Yeah.
I just want to say, from the data scientist point of view, eventually games is fun, data science is fun. So you cannot, so you can't blame him, right? If you didn't stop him when you should, he will go and continue forever. So feel lucky at some point.
I feel like we let him down because our game was not advanced enough to handle his AI.
Okay, so this is, I think, an important challenge that I want to add here is the people that eventually do the work, the talents. I think for me, always people were the center, okay? If you have motivated, passionate, creative people, you basically can do everything. And from one point of view, you want to provide the impact. You want to do what the business is asking. But you have these smart people that really want to use their head. So we need to, as the AI leader, I need to find the compromise, and always to make sure that we provide the business needs, but also to feed these data scientists and engineers creativity and love for innovation. So I think this is another big challenge. This is my personal day-to-day challenge.
That's actually a really good one. And I'll say that even on the other, like on my side, like when we are actually looking at, you know, kind of either finding talent or bringing in talent, part of what we try to do is be like, well, what is the unique challenge? Because you can't have someone, especially a highly trained, educated data scientist or someone experienced in the eye, and you're setting them like, you can't just have them pound the same nail every day, right? They're going to be like, what am I doing with myself? Like, it's almost a little bit of like, let's give them some unique challenges in there. And I kind of look at that and I'm like, I know when I'm looking for or trying to integrate someone experienced in AI, like either I have to make sure that they're able to move to different projects so that they cannot be stuck on one thing, or I have to sort of say that they have to work, or let them work on a couple different projects. And the other one is to potentially give them a pathway to be creative or to come up with ideas that we're not necessarily asking them for, but if they want to present an idea about how they could make improvements. I think that's one of those things where you're going to go, that's where you're going to get your best stuff. You'll be like, no one thought about how this was work, but like the person who's focused on AI, who is the researcher on AI, is thinking about how to make it work for you. So be open and listen to that and make sure, because that's where you're going to get your best stuff.
Completely agree. You can find amazing stuff when you give these people just be creative and innovate. You can find amazing things.
Like, how would you improve this? Like here's a bunch of processes. Is there anything you think you would work? And it's just like, I don't want to say let people go, but like, if you have good people, that's what you want to let them do. Let them run, right? Let them go, see what they come back with.
Exactly. I have a similar method to what you said. When I in the same project, but I would say, let's find several solutions. One, you go to the straightforward, something that eventually will provide the requirement with high confidence. Then go to another method, which is crazy, state of the art. Go ahead. And even a third one, let's go talk with the team, with the group, try to brainstorm, find interesting ideas, interesting directions, and then you have 3 methods. One will succeed for sure, but most likely would not be so innovative. The others might go somewhere. And the idea is really to manage them in a way that eventually you will meet the business timelines, and the researchers eventually will have the opportunity to be creative and innovative.
Yeah.
Wow, that's incredible. And it's so interesting to hear kind of how things have changed over the years. So thank you both for that. I think it's time for our last question. We've talked about a lot about, what's been changing now, but let's talk about what's possible. What do you see as the future of gaming over the next 7 years? This is a big one, but it's really exciting. Curtis, do you want to kick us off on this one?
Oh man, I was going to be like, I want to hear what Assaf says first.
Well, we can go with Assaf first. It doesn't matter.
Oh no, okay, let him go first, because I'm so curious now.
7 years is between planning and dreaming. So I think that one very interesting direction is, as we are talking today about autonomous cars, I think we can talk about autonomous game studio. Now, it will not be self-driving game studio, okay? But maybe to be able to, Google has a research domain called the NAS, Neural Architecture Search, in which neural networks train neural networks. So find AI solution that will build game features and maybe products. I think it can be a very interesting direction, and then integrate it with the automation that I mentioned earlier of the monetization, game experience, customer support, marketing, and just to have everything together, some kind of self-managed autonomous game studio. I think this is one amazing direction.
That's cool. I'm glad I let you go first. I think first I would go, there's a couple aspects, because I love the idea of sort of the autonomous nature of it. One, I would say, if we're talking, 7 years, that the idea of cloud and technology moving away from actually having it physically with you, that will move very heavily to the cloud, that everything will essentially be streamed or connected in that sense. And that's sort of, I don't even know if that's super long term, because a lot of times now we're talking so much sort of cloud, that the computing power will no longer exist with on us. It'll be being heavily done. So this sort of changes the dynamics of the hardware itself, in the sense of we're not waiting for upgrades. Like, all the upgrades could just kind of happen in a separate site, and that would be that's how they adjust. That's feels even closer than I'd say. But I think when we're talking about sort of the experiences that we're going to provide and the world that we're going to be providing for people, whether it's that sort of autonomous or unique experience where it's really going to sort of have an understanding of, I don't say you, and I will say that, but like, that it'll really understand you on some level and what sort of experience you sort of resonate with, or what is meaningful for you, and potentially understanding that. Now, I will caveat it, because I think that Assaf brought up a really great point about we need to approach it a lot with the idea of sort of how important privacy and really kind of ethics are going to be in these things. Because as much as we didn't touch on it with this, is that we have to be cautious about sort of the information we're sort of getting, because it's very easy for us to, oh, that's useful information. That's useful. I can help either sell you on this, or I'm providing you a better experience. But is it a privacy concern? Am I getting too much? Am I using it? Because I mean, anytime we're sort of utilizing that private information to persuade or adjust them or to get them to purchase, I would consider that a violation of ethics. So it's really about what is the person sort of comfortable with sharing, and also is it ethical? In the end of the day, I think we have to sort of ask ourselves those questions, and how we're sort of processing that data, and how we look at that, and sort of, is that processing sort of, on a game level, it's pleasant, but we have to sort of look at it, how is it affecting their lives as well? So, I like to think that we would be smart about sort of approaching these things ethically without necessarily having to be told to be ethical. I'm sure that that's not always the case with some companies. I mean, I like to think that, we would be, but, I think that as in terms of the future, I think those are sort of like the concern around that privacy and those sort of issues. But at the same time, I think where we're going in terms of providing these rich worlds, these amazing experiences, and really experiences that kind of even can help people grow on a sort of emotional level, on a sort of intelligence level, educational level, is where we can really sort of say, like, the AI is going to sort of help you sort of become, I don't say more of a person, but like really grow in a lot of ways. And I think we can, if we're going in the right direction and we approach it with an ethical consideration, I think we could potentially get there. So that's kind of where I would see.
I completely agree. I think that privacy and ethics are prerequisite for the growth of AI and basically anything else that we're doing. Eventually, we need to make sure that always the experience of our users, the entertainment, this is the important thing. By the way, if we are still in the 7 years dream, I want to allow myself to be a kid for a second, and yeah, really. And I have to say that when we were talking right now, I was thinking about, I hope that we will be there to have something like a 3-dimensional real world with amazing animation, and everything is perfectly integrated, the sounds, the environment, the other players that are playing with you. And we have infinity, I don't know, games or opportunities to do things in this 3-dimensional world. You can play soccer, which is my favorite. You can play bingo. You can search for hidden objects in this three-dimensional world. I think with AI we can be there. It's just a question of priorities and interest. So I hope it will happen.
That sounds very exciting, and I'm looking forward to the new era of gaming as we continue moving with AI. This is very exciting stuff. So we've covered a lot today, and I would just love to say thank you to both of you for sharing your incredible insights, because this has been amazing. I've learned a lot, and I know this virtual audience has as well. So thank you both for taking the time today.
Thank you very much. Hope that next year we will meet face to face.
Oh, definitely.
Yes.
That's what we're hoping for too. Well, thank you again. And we look forward to seeing you both in the gaming world. And for our audience, it's time for you to make your way to your next session. Along the way, make sure you accept your connection request and take some time to check out our amazing exhibits. Thanks so much, and we'll see you around.
Thank you.